You went online to switch your car insurance to Progressive so you could save money. But then you saw a friend request from an old summer camp buddy. And now here you are, clicking through photos of his kickball team from 2011. Looks like they won the championship that year. Then he moved to Tulsa. Oh, a new tattoo. Yes, they said it was easy to save hundreds on car insurance with Progressive, but they forgot about the rest of the internet. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average savings by new customer surveyed who saved in 2019.
Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of the Inside Line Formula One podcast. My name is Mithila.
Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Kunal.
And guys, Formula One action has resumed this week. So Mercedes had their private test in a 2-year-old car. And next week, the pink Mercedes, as we call it, will have a day-long test at Silverstone.
Yes, Lance Stroll is going to have a go. And in case you guys didn't know, it's a filming day test. So Lance Stroll will get like 18 laps around Silverstone because that's what the rules, around a filming day test say, that you can only test 100 kilometers per day.
Yeah, but Kunal, I think it's understandable that Racing Point will be doing a test next week.
Because it's Racing Point or because it's Lance Stroll? I think it's Lance Stroll. Is that what you mean?
Well, it's not what I meant. It's probably because they realized, okay, Mercedes has tested, so we need to go ahead and test as well.
Okay, now I get it. You meant
now
that...
you get it, yeah.
Mercedes, pink Mercedes, the silver Mercedes is ran, so the pink Mercedes is also needed to run. But thank you so much, yes. And but from the Mercedes test, the most interesting part for me was Valtteri Bottas confirming that Mercedes aren't looking at Sebastian Vettel for 2021.
I know, right? For me, it was so annoying. It was like, whoa, Valtteri, you party pooper, you. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who was quite annoyed because I'm sure Chase Carey himself would have been annoyed, with this whole anticlimactic end to this Vettel possibly going to Mercedes conversation.
Yeah, you could say Valtteri Bottas was out of line while trying to be in line, with the whole conversation because... Formula One has used driver movements to keep fans engaged in this long off-season, right? And then, of course, we had Toto Wolff claim that Sebastian Vettel being available cannot be ignored. But that's that.
But, Kunal, speaking of Valtteri Bottas, that is not all that we have to talk about. Valtteri Bottas has been a party pooper on track, and I understand that bit, He is doing his best.
That's a little harsh, but okay.
Yeah, he's doing his best to survive in a team that's centered around Lewis Hamilton and all of that. But I think he could have let this whole Vettel to Mercedes story float about for a little longer and then just let the official channels do the talking.
Well, one of the reasons Bottas chose to clarify this claim was actually for his own good. Because, it's in his best interest to keep all these Mercedes to choose Vettel over Bottas stories at bay, He needs all the positivity he can in 2020 because this is probably his only chance to beat Lewis Hamilton if that at all can happen.
Yeah, I get all of that. I just don't understand why you can't let me have my fun, First Valtteri Bottas and now you, I don't understand. But you know what, Kunal, I'm going to put it this way. Mercedes, they weren't going to confirm their drivers for 2021 anytime soon. So why not just let the suspense continue?
You are thinking like Chase Carey. I'm pretty sure he was also wondering, he would have probably
spit
out his drink and be like, oh my God, did the biggest ace of my communication suspense go away?
Yeah, and I understand what you say that Bottas needed to know for himself, but he needs to understand we didn't need to know.
You're crazy and
I am.
I get your point of view, but I'll tell you what else is crazy. Mika Häkkinen's immense belief that Valtteri Bottas' talent to be the world champion, right? He's been saying this since the day Bottas joined Formula One and then has been saying it 4 times a day maybe since Bottas joined Mercedes. And in fact, he said this on our podcast, when he was here as a guest a few years ago. So honestly, given all the rumors around Mercedes' second seat, 2020 could be Bottas' last chance to win a world title because I get this feeling that, Mercedes will go for a younger driver come 2021.
Yeah, and Kunal, I'm going to put it in a very zingy manner. Contender or pretender? That's what Bottas needs to decide for 2020.
How poetic.
I know, right? And, personally, I would love to see him win because it would be such a huge slap in the face if everyone who thinks that, only Hamilton and Verstappen and Leclerc are the serious title contenders for 2020.
Absolutely. I think it would be an unexpected and, dare I say, an unpopular result in every way. The last time somebody beat Hamilton, he was probably the most hated driver, in the world, in the Formula One paddock, right? But I would love to see Bottas win, right? And, interestingly, everyone has been talking about rust and, they've been raking up miles in whatever machines they can get their hands on. Valtteri Bottas has been karting or rallying ever since the Australian Grand Prix got cancelled. And this is what he himself has claimed, right? So let's hope that this gets him a jump start into 2020. And I don't mean a jump start literally in motorsport terms. I just mean that, given the whole cramped season, he has a head start.
Yeah. Kunal, you know what? We've literally just finished one entire segment before telling our listeners what's in store for them this week on our podcast. So,
go for it.
Yes, guys, we'll update you about the 2020 calendar. It's like no one cares about the cancelled or postponed races. We just want to know what race will be race number 9 and 10 and so forth.
We'll also bring you up to speed about who's testing what before the start of the fresh season. And we'll be talking power units because there's noise about the 2026 Formula One regulations
I cannot
already.
think that far. Anyway, there's also bits and pieces of updates coming in on Formula One's marketing around Ferrari's 1000th race. Vettel not agreeing for a pay cut from Ferrari, and how finally the team's reserve drivers might get some spotlight in Formula One.
Yes, I would love to, just say it out there. Vettel not taking a pay cut from Ferrari is his personal choice. And instead, he has decided that he's going to contribute it to a charity of his choice. At least that's what the reports say, right? But guys, we've also got an important announcement. It's not, a donation to charity, if I may be honest with you guys. It is about the fact that, we've launched a video channel. It's called Pits to Podium. And we're going to share some of our video content on the Inside Line F1 podcast as well. Of course, it is going to be in audio for y'all, but you will hear that content, in the next few days.
Yeah, I think, Kunal, to keep it simple, we should just mark out those episodes specifically so our listeners know which ones are, the original Inside Line Formula One podcast episodes.
Yes. Let's get started. Finally. Wow. Second segment. What do we have? I'm going to talk about the 2020 Formula One season because, there's like 2 seasons running in parallel. The original calendar and everyone's just like, okay, which is the next race going to get cancelled? Which is the next race going to get postponed? And then there is the revised calendar where everyone's, like we said, which is race number 9, 10, 11, 12 and, Formula One still wanting to host 15, 18 races in the year. So news are just in that Azerbaijan, Japan and Singapore have been cancelled for 2020. And guys, my honest approach is, for me, all races of the original 2020 calendar have been cancelled. And I'm now only looking forward to the revised calendar as Formula One keeps announcing it.
Yeah, me too, in fact. And, we've said this before. I think permanent circuits have an advantage over street circuits. Like, I don't think personally we're going to have a street race in 2020 at all,
I think so too.
Monaco, yeah. Azerbaijan, Singapore, all of them off.
Yes, and Japan is not a street circuit, but guys, it has been cancelled for immigration reasons. Yes, it is way far away in October, but the MotoGP round in Japan, which was actually a week after Formula One, that got cancelled several weeks ago. So this was in the offing as well. Yeah.
By the way, Mugello, it seems like they've selected Formula One over MotoGP, like a lot of our listeners have as well. Yeah, so they're mostly in line to host a race later on in the year. And in fact, Formula One's been using this opportunity to have Mugello host Ferrari's 1000th race. So that's pretty historic. And I think it's a great marketing idea. They do everything they can to have fans attend the races if possible. But if not, it's okay.
But fans aside, Formula One aside, I think let's pause for a moment to appreciate that this is Ferrari's 1000th Grand Prix entry. And I think those numbers are pretty phenomenal. It's pretty historic. It's brand with a crazy legacy and history. And coincidentally, I'm reading a book on Enzo Ferrari by Brooke Yates, and I absolutely recommend that all Formula One fans read it, even if you're not a fan of Ferrari, because it sort of makes you relive the legend and how it got formed. And the history is pretty fascinating, right from being Alfa Romeo's unofficial racing department to making military equipment during the World War II, and then finally making great sports cars, So I would definitely recommend reading it. I literally get goosebumps flipping through the pages every now and then.
Yeah, Kunal, thank you for the recommendation. I'm going to read it soon, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are also going to take that cue.
And just so you guys know, I'm not done yet. Ferrari have been taking a beating from Mercedes since the earliest days of motorsport. That's enough history for you guys to know.
Ouch. How can I say ouch anymore? But, Kunal, I was a little bit surprised to see Mugello cancel a scheduled MotoGP round to host a Formula One race. I mean, that is some sort of indication, right? About, which series is more important and just more influential.
Sounds so weird if you're MotoGP, It's like Mugello's been hosting a MotoGP race ever since, and suddenly they're like, no, we're getting a chance to host a Formula One race at no cost without paying race hosting fees. Thank you, MotoGP, we're going to have Formula
Thanks
One.
for no thanks.
Yes, and of course, Mugello is a Ferrari-owned circuit, so their priorities are pretty clear to celebrate the team's 1,000th race, right? And for all their rigidity, Ferrari will be a participating team and a race host in 2020, right? That's pretty unique.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, from all these new venues that may host races in 2020, which ones might actually stay on as regular venues once normalcy resumes? I mean, I know the calendar is capped to 25 races, but which 25?
So when I'm not working in Formula One, I'm a marketing technology guy. And the one big question we always have is this whole new versus returning visitors, when you run website analytics. And this just reminds me of that. You got a new visitor, what is it going to take for, him or her to become a returning visitor? But anyway, technology and, Google Analytics aside, I'm just glad that Formula One has all these circuits, that they can juggle with to host races in this special season of 2020 as we know it. And it's in fact a privilege, for Formula One. There's also news that Russia and China are ready to host double-header races in the second half of this season.
Yeah, I was amazed, Kunal, because this whole news about China possibly hosting a Grand Prix or two, it's absolutely ironic because that's where the whole pandemic started from, right?
Shh,
yeah, but
they don't want you to know that.
I'm not going to fade into this whole global anti-China rhetoric right now. I'm just going to stick to Formula One because that's what we do on this podcast. And Toto Wolff said that Abu Dhabi and Bahrain might be added to the end of the season.
Well, a few of these circuits might hold double-header races just so that we get to that 15-18, race number that Formula One has in mind. So let's see what we get at the end of the season. It's so crazy. We're going to start the season not knowing if more races could be added, and that could actually be the reality.
That is really exciting. And in fact, guys, we've discussed some really interesting experiments for Formula One to try and run in 2020, especially for the second race of the same circuit.
And for in between those races, that's what I'm also proposing. Run a race on Wednesday. I've been screaming at the top of my lungs every time this topic comes up.
Yeah, and so guys, you all should really tune in. It's our previous episode. It's also very interesting. And Kunal, I would say that is the beauty of 2020. This is our 22nd episode this year. And I think pretty much every single previous episode is still as valid as possible.
Silver lining in the dark cloud of the 2020 Formula One season. The shelf life of 22 episodes into 30 minutes is still valid. And that's not pretty bad, I'd say.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of experiments, I think the one circuit experiment that we should really talk about is how these circuits are trying to fill up the empty stands. So we've discussed this. South Africa has had play dolls and soft toys to replace the missing fans.
You mean South Korea, but yes, I understand why you meant South Africa. Or I don't actually. But
I was just distracted by the joke I was going to crack after while I was thinking of this.
Which is?
Because, Kunal, they've had play dolls and soft toys. So it's like they're swinging wildly between adult toys and kids' toys.
I don't know which part is funnier. Is it the adult toys or the kids' toys? But I don't think a play doll excites you. So we're just going to move on from that. But yes, I think personally, it's a little odd, and it's a waste of time trying to fill up the stands. So if the circuit owners are listening, guys, just give it a break. I don't think you guys should spend any money or time doing that. I mean, the way I see it, it'll always be remembered in the history of Formula One that there were no fans in the first 8 races of 2020, at least the first 8 races, right? So let's live with that reality. Then go ahead and make a joke out of ourselves.
Yeah, by the way, Silverstone is, they're considering cardboard cutouts in the stands. And, my thought was like, wow, thank you for ruining the environment even more.
Even more.
What a waste of cardboard.
And it's just when the environment is sort of trying to fight back.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, screw you, I'm going to put more cardboard out there. But, I also think of safety hazard. So what if there's a gust of wind and some of these cutouts just fly away and, they fall onto the track? I mean, not one, but I'm talking of many, because that could be like a hazard for the drivers. It could hamper visibility. It could get sucked into radiators, which is even far worse the case. Imagine having, a case where a driver has to retire because a fake fan flew off the circuit and into the radiator of a driver's
Sounds hilarious.
car.
And you know what,
Holy
Formula
man.
One, I really want to make a plea, please let our stands remain empty. I mean, that is our reality in 2020. We can deal with that.
And I second Mithila's plea. I even third Mithila's plea. And thank you for putting it out there. I really hope these guys are listening. But if you guys have any comments or suggestions on circuits wasting resources and time and money to fill up the empty stands, write to us via our Facebook page with the Inside Line F1 podcast on Facebook as well.
Okay, so Kunal, we're going to move to our next topic of discussion, reserve drivers. So guys, we know that, in recent times, being a reserve driver or third driver, call it as you may, it basically meant barely any miles in the car. It was a case of, what if, and that what if never got triggered for a variety of reasons.
All the good reasons as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
But suddenly that situation seems to be changing. Because if any driver contracts the virus in 2020, that reserve driver will get to step in and race because the show must go on, right?
Yes, I mean, personally, it sounds a little inhuman, but it's understandable. Formula One is putting sport above everyone else, and that's how it should be, and I'm glad it's the way it is. But, of course, having said that, we are hoping that the what-if scenarios don't get triggered ever more so, in Formula One, even more so in 2020, I would say. Because it wouldn't be fair to see a driver being sit out of a race for, getting a corona infection or so on, right? But anyway, the moot point being that you guys already know the reserve drivers for all the teams, right? But here's a few funny ones that we found, when we were trying to see who the reserve drivers are, what could they be racing and so on, right? So if Sebastian Vettel does not decide to race, for whatever reason.
Yeah, we can just leave the reasons aside.
Yeah.
Fine.
So So if Vettel doesn't race, Antonio Giovinazzi and Pascal Wehrlein are two of Ferrari's reserve drivers with prior Formula One car experience, right? So if they pick Giovinazzi, I wonder who's going to race for Alfa Romeo. Will it be Mick Schumacher? Will it be Pascal Wehrlein? Or no, wait, they have Robert Kubica. So, there is a sort of a queue in there. But imagine Giovinazzi getting a promotion to Ferrari, which is in such an unexpected way.
Yeah, and I was also thinking of how rusty the reserve drivers may be. Given that they've been out of a racing car for longer.
True.
Say, for example, Pascal Wehrlein. He's probably not driven an actual racing car since Formula E, the last E-Prix?
Yeah,
It was a while ago.
And to think of it, his last fastest car was the Formula E car he raced, which we know is not as fast.
So yeah.
No offense, but just putting, a fact out there. So fair bits and pieces of considerations for teams to make and Formula One to make, I would say. And here's another scenario. So Mercedes and McLaren share the same reserve driver pool. That's Esteban Gutierrez, for whoever remembers him. And for Stoffel Vandoorne, for everyone who remembers him. And thankfully, both teams can have one in case a situation arises.
But it gets more complicated, Kunal, because Racing Point also shares the same two reserve drivers. And I really hope that all three teams don't need to call upon the reserves. Because that would get pretty complicated. Though I'm guessing Lawrence Stroll must be the least stressed out of this whole sharing situation. Because, power of money. That usually works.
Yeah. And I also wonder just how many drivers will be traveling to these races in 2020 because, some of them drive Formula 2, so it's easier for them. They're always there, at the support races. But what about those drivers who are not Formula 2 drivers? So, a few names come to my mind. Sebastian Buemi, Marcus Ericsson, Pascal Wehrlein, as we spoke about, right? So I'm interested to see just how many drivers will end up traveling to the races in 2020. I mean, having standby replacements would be crucial more than ever before.
Well said.
And remember, guys, Williams have 4 reserve drivers, but none of them have prior Formula 1 experience. So, I'm sure the team's going to think 4 times literally before putting any of the Williams reserve drivers into a Formula 1 car.
True, and likewise actually for Renault and Haas, because their reserve drivers, they've all tested, but they've never raced in Formula 1 before. So also things to think about. But anyway, Kunal, when racing resumes, I think I'm just going to count how many reserve drivers actually land up traveling to the races.
Good idea. Let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that. Because I think it would give us an indication of how paranoid Formula 1 is or isn't about drivers actually getting coronavirus.
That's true. But yeah, frankly, guys, jokes aside, like we've said before, we hope that no one contracts the virus and we end up racing safely for ever,
Yeah, you're reminding me of Lando Norris, Kunal.
The for forever message.
Like ever, ever.
If I ever meet Lando Norris, I'm going to ask him one simple straight question. Who actually paid for your private Formula 3 test last week? Was it McLaren? Was it Carlin? Or did you just pay for it yourself?
Kunal, you're like that investigator who never gives up.
Yeah.
Ever.
But that's what I do, It's like people react saying, oh wow, see Lando Norris has gone and tested a Formula 3 car, and I'm the types who react to say, great, he's tested a car, but what's the business model behind this, or what's the cost model behind this? Because, I understand the business of motorsport, I'm really passionate about it. So I don't get swayed behind all these news. I try and catch what are the undercurrents around them,
Yeah, so tell us, who do you think paid for Norris's test?
Okay, so my deduction is that McLaren has definitely not paid for the test. So it's probably Lando Norris himself, or Carlin did him a favor and offered him a free test.
Yeah.
That could be one of those
That's
scenes.
possible, and I'm sure Carlin then also used this time to kind of get back into the groove of things. But then I wonder why Lando and not one of the regular drivers, for the 2020 F3 season.
Yes. Somebody's got to keep asking these questions, and I'm glad that somebody is us on the Inside Line F1 podcast. But, Lando Norris is, of course, testing a Formula 3 car because McLaren, unfortunately, aren't able to test or have a private test in their Formula 1 cars because Renault aren't giving them an engine to go testing, right? Mm-hmm. For those who are new to this story, McLaren are moving to Mercedes in 2021, so Renault have refused to give them an engine to conduct private test in 2020.
Yeah. I mean, Kunal, I know it sounds petty, but I'm also thinking that since McLaren and Renault will be locked into this showdown battle for 4th place, it's kind of understandable.
Well, yes, competitive reasons aside, my reasons to want teams to test, especially these private tests, is purely on safety grounds, right? It's been 6 odd months since anyone, who works inside or on a Formula 1 car actually saw a Formula 1 car in action. So it's purely for that, right? But okay, let's move on to discussing who's actually tested what during this lockdown period, because I know that Charles Leclerc, Kevin Magnussen and Pierre Gasly have driven a go-kart.
Charles Leclerc might be the lucky one who actually gets to test his Ferrari as well, because there's news that Ferrari will hold a private test one of these weeks apparently.
They've not said when though, right?
Nah.
Yeah.
And also Albon, he's driven a single-seater car and Russell is trying to get into one.
Yes, I'm also trying to get into a single-seater car in case any one of you are aware of a chassis and a power unit and some tires being available elsewhere. But on a more serious note, I'm going to speak about Lance Stroll's private test, which is going to last 18 laps at Silverstone next week. And if he drives those 18 laps at full pace, it's going to be less than 30 minutes in his Racing Point car. And to me, it just sounds like, how we would land up at a circuit, pay money for, hiring a racing car for 30 minutes. It just sounds like that. And, it's a filming day test. Let's just end it at that.
Kunal, you're just making this filming day test sound so minuscule. I mean, I'm sure the team, they're treating it as like a full-blown test and they're trying to extract whatever they can from it.
They better do, because that's what a lot of teams do with filming day tests. And, a lot of other midfield teams have finished their 2 days of filming, just before, Australia got cancelled, or just after the original preseason tests in Barcelona, right? So Racing Point are just lucky that they didn't use both their days already into the season, right?
Okay, so Kunal, we're going to move to a final topic for this episode, and that is the 2026 Formula One season, which sounds so ridiculously far away right now. But 2026 is when new engine regulations might come into effect. And what they may be, no one knows.
No one knows, but Formula One has loosely floated the idea of a hybrid two-stroke engine formula. As crazy as it may sound, we've done an episode on this some 3 odd months ago. You guys are happy to, go tune into it and understand what that was all about.
Yeah, and as I understand, Formula One wants to use these 2026 regulations to attract new power unit manufacturers to the sport. So we'll watch out for that.
Yes, and Renault's Cyril Abiteboul has already been saying that, hey, 2026 is Formula One's new next big playground or something to that effect. And I really hope that this is not what Abiteboul has sold to Renault's board, to their fans, and to their set of drivers that are going to come over the seasons, because Renault's just made a lot of commitments of late and probably kept up to none.
None, exactly. I also believe that more power unit manufacturers will make Formula One more competitive. We've had private teams and private engine manufacturers like teaming up in the past with good success.
Yes, I would love to see more power unit manufacturers. Also for political reasons, Right now we've seen how Ferrari and Mercedes are controlling the competitive quotient of the grid, as we've spoken about several times before. But for those of you wondering if 2026 is very far, it actually isn't in Formula One terms or in Formula One's timelines, because they'll have to first agree on a formula. They'll have to table the formula for that, right? And then once it is voted in and, the WMSC approves it, teams might start developing that new formula as early as 2023. So that's literally just a few years away from now. And for me, I just hope that, the 2026 engine regulations, whatever they might be, they aren't as complex and expensive as the current hybrid turbo V6 formula, because we've seen at least 3 times in this 7 years of the hybrid turbo era that teams have run out of money, and one of the reasons has been like a 3x increase in the price of these power units.
Yeah, by the way, that reminds me, Kunal, guess who is helping Williams hunt for a new investor? It's good old Bernie.
You can never take him out. You can take Bernie out of Formula One, but you can't take Formula One out of Bernie. Or in his case, it's the reverse, I think.
He's just always there. But I think it's a very nice gesture, for his old friend. And I hope the team survives.
Yes, the only question on my mind, though, is will Bernie Eccleston keep a finder's commission if he gets an investor for Williams, right? Because in Formula One, things seldom happen without money being involved.
Especially when Bernie's involved. Anyway, Kunal, on that note, I think we should end this episode. It's been a great episode. It's been a lot of fun. Guys, we'll be back next week. Stay tuned. We're the Inside Line Formula One podcast.
Yes, adios.
Adios.
More time at home means more washing, drying, cooking, and cleaning at home, and more wear and tear on old appliances. But it's the perfect time to save on new ones at the Home Depot. For savings on the latest appliances, and right now, free delivery. From the kitchen to the laundry room, that upgrade is well within reach. And closer than ever. Save on top appliances, now at the Home Depot. How doers get more done. U.S. only while supplies last. Free delivery on major appliances $396 or more, valid through January 27th.